So, you're in the market for an entry-level German small car. What do you buy? You really only have two options. The brand new 8th generation Volkswagen GTI or the brand new, newly refreshed Audi A3. Today, we are going to compare these cars head to head to see which one is the better buy. This is Shep's Garage, and I hope you guys do enjoy this video. If you're new to this channel, this is the first time seeing my face on your screen, don't forget to please click that subscribe button down below in the description for more awesome car content like this one. You guys have been smashing that subscribe button lately and crushing with support, and I can't say thank you enough for all that support. This is my first comparison video, so if you guys do like these types of videos, I'll do more. But without all that out of the way, let's get right into this comparison test video. So you may be wondering, why am I comparing a Audi A3 and a Volkswagen GTI? That seems like a stupid review. Well, underneath, these cars are actually very similar. They both use very similar sized engines, and they're both based on the MQB platform, which is basically the small car German platform created by Volkswagen. So it only makes sense that these cars would have a lot of similarities. Well, you would be wrong. So before we get straight into the nitty-gritty with these two cars, I want to talk about the specific cars that I am reviewing. This is my dad's and brother's 2023 Audi A3, and this is a fully option car, premium plus, every single option apart from the upgraded 18-inch wheels, and it has a starting price of $35,400. However, this car is a little bit higher than that. This car has about $10,000 worth of options on it, plus destination. You're looking at around $46,500 for this exact A3 you see in front of me. And this is my 2022 Volkswagen GTI. If you've been following my channel, you've seen this car, and it has a starting price of $30,160. However, this car is a SE with the leather package, with the DSG transmission, and it has a price of $38,169 after destination and delivery. As you can notice, this car is not stock. It has a bunch of modifications on it. I've been following through this car with my channel, so if you're interested on any of the modifications that are on this car, go and watch some of my videos. New wheels, suspension, exhaust, intake, spoiler, the whole shebang. So this is not a stock car, but it still makes for a great comparison test. Let's start off with exterior design, and I want to already go and say that the big difference between these two cars is the type of car they are. The A3 here in the United States, we only get this small sedan option. In Europe, I'm jealous, but you can get a hatchback. So those comments saying you can get a hatchback in the A3, you can. In the United States, we only get a sedan, and for the GTI, obviously only comes in a hatchback. But starting with the exterior design of the A3, I have to say that it is very... Audi's always done a understated sort of exterior design, and that is no exception to the A3. It still has the very signature Audi 4 rings at the front with these normal hexagon kind of grille up front, and Audis are always very understated in this way, and they're always very tame with their designs, so they don't go too outrageous. We obviously have some fake vents and obviously a lot of hexagonal shapes around this car. It is a big theme with this car, and that is hexagonal shapes. The headlights too also have this sort of hexagonal shape to them. Down the side, once again, very tame looking wheels, nothing too special. Once again, you also have chrome trim. Again, it's a very chill looking car, I would have to say. Nothing too out of the ordinary when it comes to the A3. Once again, more kind of hexagonal shape to the rear tail lights, and the diffuser, once again, there really is nothing special to it. More hexagonal shapes in the rear vents area, and once again, sort of fake looking exhaust to the trim level, or to the diffuser I should say, and the 4 rings on the back. So once again, this A3 design is very tame. I wouldn't say boring, but there's just nothing special to this. The GTI, on the other hand, is sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum. Once again, it is understated compared with the Audi. However, you can see that there are all these colors everywhere. For example, the red brake calipers and the red GTI side badges right there. And also along the front here, we have this red giant pinstripe with the GTI badging in red. We have this big giant gaping grille with the intercooler, obviously. And we have the 4 like hexagonal fog lights that are sort of built into the front grille area here. The headlights are also sort of an interesting shape with the sort of IQ badging embedded into the headlight. Down the side, once again, it also is kind of sort of very tame. However, the one thing that does stick out to you are the red brake calipers on this car, and this car is aftermarket wheels, so we'll just ignore that. And the red GTI side badging right here. Once again, it also is very tame on the side. You can see it says Volkswagen right here. That's a pretty neat touch. Coming around the back, once again, you can see that in the back, the tail lights are pretty understated, but the big difference back here is that it is sort of lively back here with the red GTI badging and the exhaust kind of in your face type of look, and it also has a pretty nice looking diffuser back here. But other than that, this car is just a teeny little bit more exciting than the A3, which you would kind of expect. Now, underneath the GTI, we have a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder putting out 241 horsepower. As you can see, this car has a couple aftermarket stuff on it, so it's putting out maybe a little bit more than that. However, 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with 241 horsepower is the engine that you get in this car. Very, very good engine. Sounds awesome when you have an exhaust on it, of course. And overall, it's a really simple and great powertrain for this car. The Audi uses the exact same engine, a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. However, it's down on power compared to the Volkswagen. This car only has 201 horsepower. Now, I am not a sort of 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder expert, but I'm guessing it has something to do that this car has a smaller turbocharger, making it have less power. But underneath, you can see that this car is the very same. Everything is in the same spot as the Volkswagen: the intake, the battery, the ECU, the fuse box, the sort of engine itself, and the coolant tank. Everything is mainly in the same spot, but that's because it's the same engine, which I find to be quite interesting. As I said before, this car is running on the exact same platform as the GTI, the MQB chassis. Let's move on now to the interiors, where we now see the most drastic differences, and I want to start off with the Audi, starting with the seats. Now, these seats, they look fine, you know, they're comfy. They are, I don't know if this is like a fake leather or if it's real leather, but they're decent looking seats. They're black with this cool rock gray stitching, and you have this cool Alcantara piece that kind of wraps around the top part of the seat, which looks very nice. The dashboard overall looks very nice. We have some like nice wood trim here with 2 air vents, and then the screen's kind of embedded into the dashboard, which looks very nice. You have 2 air vents surrounding up top here, which kind of look like a Lamborghini Urus in some way. And then you have a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster with navigation and all those fancy stuff. But then you have this cool like aluminum piece that kind of goes across, and down below you have physical buttons and switches for your climate control and other aspects of the car, which is a big bonus compared to the Volkswagen. You have, obviously, you can control your AC with knobs and buttons and switches, which is a big bonus, and you have physical buttons galore down to your drive select, your auto start stop, your hazards, and your front park assist and traction control, stuff like that. You have down here, we have your shifter area, which looks very nice. I do love this cool, like, you know, aluminum like shifter knob thing, which it does look really nice with some gloss black trim around here. And then Going on the door panel, we have more hexagonal shapes with this really weird looking door handle, which kind of goes into the trim when you have ambient lighting and two-person memory. So overall, this interior looks very nice. You definitely see a lot of Audi within this interior. One of the biggest downsides I can see with this interior is just the quality of the materials. Now, think about it. This car is almost $5,000 more base than the Volkswagen, but this car is almost $10,000 more than my current car back there, the GTI, and the quality, I don't see a major difference in. Maybe the Audis is a little bit better, but overall, there are still a lot of cheap materials here, on the Audi. For example, you just have a bunch of just cheap plastics just surrounding the entire door, and a lot of the touch points in this car do feel also very cheap. For example, the door handle here isn't like super high quality for almost a $50,000 car. The armrest here is not wrapped in leather. It's kind of in like this vinyl material, but up top here, up top here on the door panel, it also wrapped in this like vinyl material. And same thing with the dashboard here. It doesn't feel almost 50 grand. Like, I'm looking at this interior, I'm thinking, yes, it's obviously an Audi, but it's not a $50,000 Audi. You know, it feels more like a $30,000 to $35,000 Audi. So for a fully loaded car, this interior is not that much different compared to, let's say, the base model A3. Moving on now to the Volkswagen GTI's interior, and I think this interior, it just looks a little bit better, but if not, it's almost about the same in quality. So starting to look at the seats, I definitely think that these seats look a lot better. They're bolstered and they are perforated, which is also a very, very nice look. The leather is like super, I find it to be like very super comfortable and high quality on this car. The base seats, you can get a cloth seat in this car. It's like a plaid or a tartan like look to it. However, these have the upgraded leather seats, which are $1,500 option, and I think it's 100% worth it. You have a bunch of piping and stitching to kind of liven up the interior just a little bit. Coming up to the dashboard, we have this sort of hexagonal sort of trim. You can see going entirely across the dashboard. Up here we can see we have the infotainment screen and the air vents and everything, and the one thing you'll notice to this car is the lack of buttons. Now, this car has gotten some hate with the lack of buttons, and now everything is sort of embedded into the screen. So obviously, for example, you still have physical stuff like your AC, for example, or your volume, but now it's all like touch sensitive controlled. But you still do have shortcuts down here for your assist and your driving modes and obviously your climate control, but once again, not kind of right in front of you at your convenience. Coming down though, you do see that the quality does start to see a difference with the Audi. The interior, it's fine, but it isn't where the Audi is at, sort of down here on the dashboard. You obviously still do have some sort of cheap materials coming down side with the center console and everything, but I do think the door panels are a lot I do think the door panel touch points are very, very similar. You do have a lot more padding on here than the Audi, but other than that, once again, lots of cheap materials on the door panel. Not super surprising coming from the Volkswagen, but the up top of the door panel does seem to be a little bit better padded or premium compared to the Audi. But once again, not so surprising coming from this car. Going up to the dashboard, we can see we have the gauge cluster, which is a screen, and then this upgraded screen here. This is a upgraded 10.2-inch screen from the normal 9-inch screen that you get standard. And you have the steering wheel, which is a flat bottom, and it's super cool looking with the perforations along the side. And you have all your controls, unlike the Audi, are all touch sensitive buttons, for example, compared to the physical buttons that are on the Audi. But overall, this interior is very, very nice, and it's sort of lively and hip looking compared to the normal understated and more sort of on the luxury side of Audi. Next, I do want to talk technology because I think Audi's technology is one of the best on the market. The only other technology I think is better than this is Mercedes MBUX. However, for a German car company and for the entry-level German car, this technology is very good. You have a very good and clear and very configurable digital gauge cluster, which you can change the different types of views of how you want your speed and everything to basically what you want in your gauge cluster. So you can have navigation, your phone, the time, basically whatever you want, you can have it in your gauge cluster. The normal center screen is also very good, very responsive, and great to the touch. And obviously you can change basically whatever you want from your music to your phone and navigation, and it's very nice, great to the touch, and easy to use and very configurable. Honestly, this infotainment system is a very good infotainment system. Can be slow at times, however, this infotainment system is very good, awesome to use, and I really generally have no complaints other than at times it can be quite slow. Moving on to the GTI's technology, and I have to say, for the high 30s price point that this technology is very good. I don't think it's as good as the Audis, but it is very, very good. However, it does have its flaws. Starting with the infotainment screen and the gauge cluster screen, it's as configurable as the Audis. You can change the different types of views of how you want your speed, and you can use these buttons and sort of change it where you want your compass, your destination info, no display, average speed, navigation, all these different things you can change, and it's pretty cool. Onto the main infotainment screen, you have this infotainment has gotten a lot of hate, and I get it, and I can see where this hate comes from. This screen is slow, it's confusing, and I honestly never use it. I just have Apple CarPlay hooked up 24/7, 365. The screen itself is kind of slow and laggy. It doesn't always work the entire time. Once the car is warmed up and driven, you do see an improvement in the speed of the display, but overall the screen, it's okay. It's confusing to navigate, and to go through all these different menus to get the air conditioning, for example, it's just a faff to do while driving. I much rather prefer the infotainment on the Audi, I'll be honest. However, this infotainment screen is alright once you do sort of get used to it. Like the Audi as well, you can go into ambient lights and change the colors of everything, but this screen, it's fine. It isn't the best, but it's good. Moving on to equipment with this A3, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but I find this A3 extremely under-equipped for the almost $50,000 price point this car is at. This car is a fully loaded car, and it doesn't even have a lot of these features I'm going to say, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a couple of things that my GTI gets, which are fairly common car features these days, but this A3, you can't get it with. For example, a heated steering wheel, a pretty common feature on a lot of cars these days. However, you cannot get it on this A3. It's not even an option. A heads-up display, for example. My GTI, it's an option, but you can't get it. Ventilated front seats or cooled front seats. It's an option on the GTI, but not on the A3. Only normal 3-stage heated seats, which is not saying it's a bad thing, but no cooled seats. A garage door opener, like where you can open it from your mirror. Once again, not an option on this A3. Very strange, but no idea why. It's on my GTI, you can come standard, but no garage door opener. I will give to this car that this car does have a couple of more nicer features compared to the Volkswagen. For example, the passenger seat is power. That's a very nice convenience. It has a better Bang & Olufsen sound system compared to the GTI, where it's a Harman Kardon in the GTI. And this car is nicer, like ambient lighting, for example. But overall, quite disappointed with the optional equipment with this car compared to the GTI. Additionally, this car can park itself, but unlike the GTI. However, quite disappointed with the sort of optional equipment you can get on this car. Once again, like I said, there is a bunch of stuff on this car that does come standard, or it's an option that the A3 can't get. For example, I have a heated steering wheel and cooled seats, and I have 3-person memory compared to the 2-person in the Audi. You have an optional heads-up display. My car doesn't have it. Top of the line cars do. However, unlike the A3, I don't have power folding mirrors, for example, or a power passenger seat as an option. I don't have as good of a sound system. This car comes with a Harman Kardon sound system, whereas the A3 is a much higher end Bang & Olufsen sound system. So to me, I think this car is just a little bit better equipment wise compared to the Audi, which is kind of surprising to me. Moving on to back seat space. So I am 5'6". This is my driving position, and I have to say that I am very comfortable. Loads of legroom, and this being a hatchback, loads of headroom too, which is awesome. Now, these back seats are very, very comfortable, including, as an option, I can have rear climate back here and heated rear seats. That's something that the A3 doesn't get. Heated rear seats. That seems like an option that most cars would have, but this car has it, but the A3 doesn't have it, which is quite strange. You have 2 climate vents back here and charging back here as well. You have an armrest that can fold down, which is very nice. You have a bunch of pockets in the back seat for your iPhone, for example. Awesome to see. And overall, generally the quality of the back seat is all right, except if you look at the door panel, you'll notice you do have nice padding up here, but once again, this entire thing is literally made of plastic, unfortunately. But other than that, this car's back seat is it's a nice place to be. I wouldn't mind sitting back here for, 2-3 hours on a long road trip. Moving on to the Audi's back seat. Once again, this driving seat is where my dad would sit. He's about 5'8", and as you can see, I do have loads of legroom, and this being a sedan, not as much headroom in the back. I am 5'6", and I'm just fitting quite fine. I could probably fit maybe 2 fingers above my head before I start to sort of struggle. This being a sedan obviously has that sort of downside of headroom, but I do have to say that these back seats are a little bit more comfortable than the ones in the GTI. Unlike the GTI though, I am lacking on amenities back here. Once again, 2 vents, and I also can control the AC back here, whether I want it cold or hot, but no heated rear seats. Once again, the GTI, you can get them. Here, you can't. No idea why. Not even an option, even in this fully loaded model. Once you get back here as well, you can start to see more cost cutting, unfortunately. You do have nice, alright padding along here, but once again, this entire door panel is literally made of plastic, just like the GTI. Nice door handle though, and nice sort of aluminum looking trim back here. You do have a folding center console with armrests, our folding center console wrapped in sort of vinyl where you can rest your arm and put drinks in. But overall, I would say the seats are definitely a lot better back here compared to the GTI, but everything else, I would say the GTI has an advantage of headroom, amenities, and sort of basically more, it feels like it's a little bit more roomy with the hatchback feel. Speaking of the hatchback feel, I do want to talk about practicality, because the big advantage with the GTI is that it is a hatchback. So what that means is you can go back here and you have all of this space when you take this partial shelf out. And the best part is if I come back here and lower this rear seat here, we can see that these rear seats kind of fold flat, and once you remove this partial shelf, you have all of this space here where you can load massive items. You could probably fit maybe a bookshelf. I fit 4 things of golf clubs back here, and it's very nice just having just a big kind of space to put stuff and not having anything here. And that's a big advantage to this car that I can see, is that it's a hatchback. And the also advantage of having a hatchback is that there's better visibility, and The back window is completely flat, so it's good visibility, and you have a bunch of space back here, which is very, very, very nice. And when you don't need that space, you still have a decent amount of cargo room for stuff. You have pockets here, and you also have a pocket under here when you can store stuff, and you got a spare wheel. So a bunch of space in the room in the back of the GTI. Moving on to the A3, once again, what's very nice is that's an auto opening trunk, very nice. And this is where the A3 lacks. As you can see, at least here in the United States, we don't get a hatchback A3. Very sad. Audi, please offer the A3 hatchback. I will buy one immediately. Anyways, once again, you do have a decent amount of cargo room, but you can't fit as much as you can like in the Volkswagen. You have this big weird window which is kind of obstructing the view, and that means that when you go and try to fold a rear seat down, you still have a decent amount of room, but you can't fit as much in it compared to the Audi because of this giant shelf right here that's sort of kind of in the way. So unfortunately, you still do have good trunk space, definitely for a lot for normal people. But if you're going to be hauling boxes and stuff a lot around, like for example, my dad has all of this stuff, floor mats, chairs, sports equipment, whatever this stuff is, you know, it's definitely a lot for normal people. But if you're going to be hauling a lot of stuff in here, the A3 is definitely going to struggle. So that's definitely one downside I can see with the A3. Alright, so we went through basically everything with these two cars. The interior, the exterior, the engines, the trunk space, the practicality. And all that's left to do is to compare how they drive, starting with the A3. Alright, so driving the A3. So this car is actually quite interesting because it's based on the exact same platform, as I said, as the GTI, but the way this thing drives is completely different. So we're gonna go on a little bit of a loop here, and I'm just gonna talk about the way this thing drives as best as I can. So parking brake off, put it in the drive, and here we go. So the first thing you'll notice when you hop into this car is that it's more on the luxury side compared to the GTI. The one thing about the GTI, which is quite obvious, is that it's more sporty, and that is obviously shown by the looks of the GTI. But this car is more tamed for on the luxury point, and I can definitely see where that is with the A3. The turning on the A3, or the handling I should say, I find quite sluggish. It's just not what I'm expecting when buying a car this small. When I'm buying a car this small, I'm expecting that this is going to be such a nimble looking car, but I find it takes turns so sluggish I think that's the right word, sluggish, to where that I find this car to be a little bit, does have a little body roll in the turns, and then when I'll demonstrate the power here in a second, but it's not sort of what I'm expecting when I'm looking at a car this small. I don't know if it's just me, but it's definitely somewhat disappointing. What isn't disappointing though is that how nice this car rides and drives for a entry-level luxury car, an entry-level MQB car, entry-level German car on this platform. Compared to the GTI, I have to say, as much as I love my GTI, and I love my GTI, this car drives and rides so nice. I mean, here's the power. So that just gives you a little bit of a taste of the power, but this car glides over everything, and it's so nice. I mean, I am currently on a pretty bumpy road right now, and this car just glides over everything, and it drives like a high-end luxury car. I don't know how to describe it, but it's such a nice, like, daily car. You know, there are times where I kind of wish from Audi that there's some kind of whiff of sportiness, and that isn't super apparent with this car, but the way that this thing just glides along the road surface is just amazing. Like, that's what I'm really shocked about with this A3. Going into a rotary, you can definitely notice that the 201 horsepower just isn't enough for this car. I would think 220 to 30 is sort of more apparent for this type of car. Getting back onto the straight road. And yes, the power is responsive. There's no delay whatsoever. However, it's just not enough. The sort of ride of this car is nice because if you need a little whiff of sportiness, you can get that whiff by putting it into dynamic mode. But if I go and put it into comfort mode, for example, I can just cruise along, glide along, and I don't have to, you know, think about anything. I just, you know, drive. You know, the handling, I think it's fine. It isn't there where I expected it to be, but for a daily driver, for like a type of person that would buy this car, I would think that they would be very happy with the amount of power, the handling, and overall the sort of feel of the car. For a car person like me, for me, if you like cars and you're thinking about buying this as an entry-level, like, first car, it's not where I want it to be. I would like a little bit sharper handling, a little bit lower center of gravity, and I would like a little bit more power. 250, I think, is the sweet spot for a car this size. Anything where it's like low 200s is just not there, and that's what I'm disappointed about when it comes to this A3. The ride, the feel, the luxuriousness of it, the luxury feel, that's what I like about this car, and that's where I see the type of person buying this car that's what they're gonna like. The sort of luxury feel. They're getting an Audi, and they're really paying for that Audi brand naming. The one thing I do want to touch upon before we switch to the GTI is visibility. And I have to say that it's there with this car, but when we get to the GTI, that's where the GTI will shine, would be visibility. But for a small sedan, you do have a good, clear vision. So that's what I think about this Audi. Let's move on to the Volkswagen. So, driving the GTI. So the one thing that I will notice, one thing that you should notice when getting into this car is just how sort of upbeat it feels compared to the Audi. And what I mean by upbeat is the level of sportiness. Now, my car has a bunch of aftermarket stuff on it, intake, exhaust, all this stuff on it. So I'm going to be driving it how like a normal person that would buy this car would drive it. So keep that in mind. So starting off with, obviously, backup camera and everything, very, very good, crisp, clear. I love how one advantage, actually, is that it comes out of the Volkswagen logo out of the back. So during the winter time, it's great because you never have a dirty camera. That's pretty cool. But anyways, off we go in this car. And the one thing that definitely I noticed when driving this car is the feel. Now, stock, this car does come up with like kind of on like higher suspension. I lowered my car, and that has some feel, that has something to do with how good this car's handling is. This car, I have to note, is front wheel drive only. If you want all wheel drive, you have to get the R, the Golf R. However, the A3 comes with an optional all-wheel drive. So, however though, saying that, I do find this car to handle better than the A3. And that probably has something to do with that this car has a lot less weight. Now, you may be saying, Shep, how in the world is that possible? It's a hatchback. The design's probably heavier. The truth is, it actually isn't. I don't feel the difference, and the limited slip front differential that this car has makes the handling feel so nice when going into turns. You can take turns like 30 to 40 miles an hour, and it will take that turn. You don't have to brake it off. So when we get up to speed, that you really notice the extra 200. You notice the extra 30, 40 horsepower this car has, because it is quick. Whoa, okay. Going 3 miles an hour over that speed limit there, not too good. But, I mean, it is quick. It is a fun car. I mean, the one thing that you'll notice is that it can be sporty when you want it to be sporty. However, if you just need a nice, like, daily driver, take it over here, pop it into comfort mode, and you can just cruise. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be obnoxious. You can just make this a nice daily driver, and the difference of the driving is drastic. The steering, for example, lightens up in this car when you put it in comfort mode, and the throttle and brake response also sort of kind of makes the car feel more dull. It's not as responsive. Then, if you want to pop it into sport mode, for example, that stuff sharpens up. The suspension sharpens up. The steering sharpens up, and you can really take turns hard. And it is just insane how the response of the car, depending on the modes, is. It's crazy. And you can really hear that intake go. This thing's fun. Moving on to visibility, I find that the visibility of the hatchback, I prefer a little bit more. Other people may think differently. However, the visibility of the hatchback to me makes me feel a little bit safer, but also I know what is around me at all times. For example, I just passed this Honda Accord. If I had the A3, if I was driving the A3 right now, that Honda Accord would be a little bit in my blind spot, whereas I can see it in my rear view mirror, and it is clear as day right there. The ride, I do have to say though, the downside of this car is some people may not like a sporty ride. This car drives and feels like a baby sports car. The way I sort of feel like it drives is that, you know, some people may not like the feeling that they're always on the road and they always kind of feel the bumps and everything. The Audi I drove, the A3, has that luxury feel to it, whereas this has less of a luxury feel and more of, thank you, Nissan Rogue, and it feels more of a sporty feel. Like, you can kind of see in the camera all the bumps I'm going over, and you can see like how I'm going about and everything. And, you know, that's definitely a downside I can see with this car. The person that would buy this car may not like the sporty feel, but also may like it too. It's definitely an advantage of this car. Overall, I can definitely say a lot of the upsides, the handling is definitely an upside. The power, the advance in power is a big upside. The visibility is definitely an upside. I would definitely have to say the downside of this car would definitely be the ride quality is just a little bumpy for a lot of people. And probably the handling may be a downside as well. It's definitely a lot better than the Audi. The weight is also a big upside. But yeah, that one big downside I would have to say would definitely be the ride quality. Just isn't as luxurious as I was hoping it for. But once again, you're buying a GTI. It's a sports car at the end of the day. So finally, we come to the conclusion here: the GTI or the A3. Now, both of these cars have their upsides and downsides. For example, the A3, it has an option to be all-wheel drive. The interior, the infotainment is nicer. It has physical buttons and knobs. And overall it has a nice luxury Audi feel to it that the Volkswagen just doesn't have. However, it also has its downsides. The practicality, for example, the sort of cheap materials, as I would like to say it, the sort of sluggish feel and underpowered feel and under-equippedness that this car does have. GTI also has its upsides and downsides as well. This car feels a lot nicer. The seats and everything do feel a lot nicer than the Audi. The car has a good peppy power feel to it, a sporty feel to it. The practicality and rear seat space is a big difference compared to the Audi. However, it does have its downsides. The infotainment is that big downside, the no buttons and knobs, and overall just that sort of feel of having to go into the infotainment and finding things is, you know, the infotainment is not great at all. We'll put it that way. But the question that you probably have been waiting for is, which one do I buy? And out of these two, I'm going to have to say, if you're in that $40,000 price range for a German, entry-level German car, out of these two brand new, my choice for, if you just need a good daily driver and everything, and you're just looking for the best value for money, the GTI is the one I would recommend to you. If you think about it, best value for money, the GTI. It's a hatchback, which means more practical, better rear seat room. It has better equipment, and the infotainment you can definitely get past, and it also has more power, a better feel to the car compared to the Audi. The A3 is not a bad car, it just disappoints me. The fact that the Volkswagen has more features to offer than the A3, it feels like that if you're buying this car, you are really paying for these 4 rings, and that's really about it. I just find this A3 the only person that I can really see buying this car is if you need an entry-level German car that has to have all-wheel drive and that has to have physical buttons and switches. If you're stuck on those two things, the A3 is the only choice I can really see you for. But for everything else, for everybody else that's just looking for a good daily driver, this car is less practical. It doesn't have as good rear seat room. The GTI is just the better option in this situation. However, if you can afford a fully loaded A3, you can probably afford the extra $5,000 to $7,000 to get the S3. The S3 is the more sporty and more well-equipped version of the A3. The S3 has more power, it has more torque, it has the same all-wheel drive, it has a nicer interior, and it basically fixes a lot of the complaints that I have with this A3. So the winner of this comparison test is the GTI, but let me know what your thoughts. Do you have the same complaints as I do? Would you take the A3 or the GTI? 40 grand, this is an almost fully loaded GTI, or A3. What do you guys think? That is that comparison test over with. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.